Hello dear student, myself Pranali Kakad. I welcome you all in our video lecture series of the subject Object Oriented Programming, that is OOP. Till now we have completed a 3 module from our subject. Now today onwards we are going to discuss a very important concept for the object oriented programming language, and that is inheritance and polymorphism. So I again welcome you all in video lecture series of the subject object oriented programming. So let's start with our discussion. These are the course content for the subject object oriented programming. Unit number 4 is related to the inheritance and polymorphism. Syllabus for the unit number 4 is introduction to the inheritance. Why we use inheritance? There are different types of inheritance, benefits of inheritance, how we use a constructor concept in a derived class, and method overriding, abstract class and interfaces, polymorphism and software reuse. There are mainly two types of polymorphism, compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. So dear student, let's start with our discussion. So inheritance is a very important feature of object oriented programming. So what is the inheritance? Derive quality and the characteristic from the parent or the ancestors is known as inheritance. Like you inherit the feature of your parents. Yes, let's take an example. We always say that she had inherited the beauty of her mother. Means what? She or he inherits the property from the parents. So inheritance in object oriented programming can be described as a process of creating new class from the existing class. So why we use inheritance? Because there is a very important advantage of inheritance is code reusability. Means what? The process of obtaining the data members and methods. We already know that class having a encapsulation property means what? In a class there is a assemble of data members and methods, that is member function. So from existing class all the data members and member function we are going to inherit or use in a new class. So this concept is known as inheritance, and it is the one of the fundamental feature of object oriented programming. So inheritance is a capability of one class to acquire the properties and characteristics from another class. The class whose properties are inherited by other class, that is existing class, is known as parent class, base class or super class. So dear student, we have an existing class with us. In existing class there is a data member and member function. So this data member and member function are get inherited by a new class. So existing class is known as parent class, base class or super class. And the class which inherit the property of existing class, that new class is known as child class, derived class or subclass. We will see with an example. So inheritance makes the code reusable. So main advantages of inheritance is code reusability. When inherits an existing class, all its method and fields become available in the new class. Hence code is get reused. There is one note for the inheritance is that all the members of class except private are get inherit. Okay. Here this is the real life example. We already discussed that we all inherit the characteristic from our parent. So this line says that son, I am the base class. And his child is say that, dad, I am the derived class, because this child inherit the characteristic of from his parents. Okay, so there are lots of advantages for the inheritance. If we are develop any application using the concept, that application have following advantages, means whenever I use inheritance in my application development time is less. Why? Because we use a existing code from a existing class, so the development time is less. Application take less memory. Why? Because we use existing code, so memory is get less. Application take less memory. As there is a time is less and memory is less, the execution time is also less due to the code reusability property of inheritance. And application performances get enhanced, that is improved. Why? Because we use less memory, time is also get reduced for the execution, and therefore the application performance is get improved. So redundancy, that is repetition of the code, is reduced or minimized, so that we get consistent result and less storage cost. So use of virtual keyword. So using virtual keyword we are performing polymorphism. So the compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism also available in an inheritance concept. See here, suppose this faculty is one class. Faculty is having data member and method. We already discussed, from this faculty class there is another class student. This student class, whenever we use an inheritance concept, this student class is termed as derived class, subclass or child class. Okay, and this faculty class is known as base class, super class and parent class. Whenever I use an inheritance concept in between these two classes, this is the base class, this is a child class or a derived class. Base class, derived class, parent class, child class. Okay, so faculty is base class, student is derived class, faculty is parent class, student is child class, faculty is a super class, student is a subclass. Whenever I use an inheritance concept between these two classes, that time all the data members and methods are get inherited or usable in a student class. So this dotted line shows that these data member are defined and declared in a faculty class, but it's available in a student class. These methods also declare and define in a faculty class and available in a student class. So this is logically present. This dotted data member and dotted data methods are logically present in a student class, but it is actually having in a faculty class. So this is the use of inheritance. Let's discuss the syntax of the inheritance. How we use inheritance in a programming manner. So dear student, whenever I use an inheritance concept, there is a difference in a syntax for derived class. So class is a one keyword. Subclass name means what? Derived class name. This is a colon use here. Access mode. This access mode is public, private or protected. We are going to discuss in later part. Superclass name. This superclass name means base class name or parent class name from which you want to inherit the properties, that is data member and member function. And this is the data member and method of own data member and own method of subclass. Okay, so while defining a subclass like this, superclass must be already defined or at least declared before the subclass declaration. Whenever you want to use this syntax for the derived class, your superclass or base class is already declared before this syntax, or you can at least declare the base subclass or base class, superclass or base class before this subclass. Okay, so access mode is used to specify the mode in which the properties of the superclass will be inherited into the subclass, public, private or protected. Colon is the operator is used for the inheritance feature in a OOP. So don't get bothered, we will discuss with one example. So dear student, class rectangle. This is a base class rectangle. Area is, see here, this is rectangle is known as superclass, parent class or base class. Okay. Now next is we are going to declare a derived class, and derived class syntax we already discussed. Class is one keyword. Area is derived class name or subclass name. Colon is an operator used for in an inheritance concept. Public is an access specifier, and rectangle is a superclass name or base class name. Okay. Again, if I want to declare another derived class or subclass, again follow the similar syntax. Class is a keyword, perimeter is a subclass name, colon, public is a access specifier, rectangle is our base class name. Okay. So dear student, this is the basic syntax. Only note here, before going to declare a derived class, there is a you must declare your base class before the derived class syntax. This is the only one thing you remember in inheritance concept. Otherwise, your compiler gives you error. See here, suppose class dog inherit the property from the animal. So in this case, your animal is your base class or superclass, and dog is your derived class or a subclass. Let's discuss. Suppose class animal. This is a diagram. We are going to implement this diagram in a programming form. So first you declare base class, class animal, open curly bracket, close curly bracket with semicolon. This is the syntax for class. Public is access specifier, int leg is equal to 4. This is the data variable of class animal. So dear student, class dog, I want to declare this dog class as a derived class of animal class. Class is a keyword, dog is a derived class name, colon is a operator used for the inheritance concept, public is a access mode, animal is a base class name. Here base class is animal. Now dear student, dog class having its own data variable. So you include this data variable in a derived class. Now in main section, I only create an object of dog class, and see what happened. I can use this d.lex and d.tel, but leg is a data variable of animal class. Now how this object of dog class access this leg variable? Yes dear student, this is the magic of inheritance. Means whenever I use this inheritance concept, all the data variable or member function of animal class get access in a dog class. See here, D dot leg means I uses a D object of dog class and I access this leg variable in my dog class. Animal is a superclass, dog is a subclass. After performing inheritance, this leg, that is data variable of animal class, get accessible or logically available in a subclass. Okay, so subclass dog inheritance the properties of the superclass. Then we create an object of subclass. After creating object of subclass, we can use this leg into dog class, and using object of dog class we print the data variable of superclass. Now we are going to discuss a visibility mode in an inheritance concept. So dear student, depending on the access modifier used in an inheritance syntax, the availability of the class member of superclass in the subclass get changes. It can be either private, protected or public. Let's discuss. So public, this is the most used inheritance mode. In this mode, the protected member of superclass become protected member of subclass and public member becomes the public. So dear student, whenever I declare a subclass as a visibility mode public, that time the data member of a base class, protected member of a base class becomes the protected in a derived class, public member of a base class becomes the public in a derived class. Now if I use a private mode, so by default it is a private mode in inheritance, means if I declare a derived class like way class keyword subclass colon and I not include any visibility mode, means this is the default value, and in C++ the default visibility mode in inheritance is private. Suppose I declare my derived class in this manner, so what happen dear student, it is by default private mode and the protected and public member of a superclass become the private member of the derived class. Now last is your protected. Whenever I use this type of syntax, that is access mode or visibility mode as a protected for in a inheritance syntax, that time what happen, in a protected mode the public and protected member of superclass becomes the protected member of subclass. See here. See dear student carefully. Suppose you have a base class and derived class. We are going to learn the visibility mode in inheritance. Suppose in your base class you have a private data member, protected data member and public data member, and this is the access or visibility mode in a inheritance syntax. If I use a public visibility mode, if I use public visibility mode in my inheritance syntax, that time the private data member of a base class is not inherited. Protected member of my base class is treated as a protected. Public member of my base class is also get treated as a public. Whenever I use a public access specifier, this is going to happen. Now we are going to discuss about private access mode. If I use a private access mode in inheritance syntax, that time private data member of base class is not inherited. Protected member of my base class is get transferred as a private data member. public data member of my base class also get access as a private in a derived class. Done? Now we are going to discuss protected access mode for the inheritance. If I use a protected access specifier in my inheritance syntax, again private member of my base class is not inherited. Protected member of my base class is treated as a protected. Dear student, but public member is treated as a protected in a derived class. So this is the visibility mode in a inheritance concept. Now we are going to discuss what is the effect after using inheritance concept. See carefully. A derived class can access all the non-private member of its base class. Thus, base class member that should not be accessible to the member function of the derived class should be declared private in the base class. Means what? The private member of the base class cannot be get inherited in a derived class. So, whenever we use a public data variable in any class, it is accessible in a same class. Protected member is also get accessible in a same class. Private member is also accessible in a same class without using inheritance concept. All these public, private and protected members are get accessible in a same class. But when we use derived class, that is inheritance concept, that time your public member get inherited in a derived class, protected member also get inherited in a derived class, and private member is not get access or inherited in a derived class. Okay. This is the access control and inheritance. A derived class can be access all the non-private member of base class. Means what? Private member cannot be accessed in a derived class. See this matrix. Private member cannot be accessed in a derived class. So we can find out the access control and inheritance from this matrix. See here, public data member access in a same class, public data member access. See here how this matrix get read. Public data member access in a same class, public data member get access in a derived class, no problem. Public data member can be accessed in outside the class. But what about protected? Protected data member access in a same class, no problem. Protected member in a derived class, yes, you can access protected member in a derived class using inheritance concept. But protected member outside the class without inheritance, no, not possible. See this. What about private? Private member only accessible in a same class, but this private member cannot be accessed in a derived class also and from outside the class also. So we cannot inherit the private member of a base class. So from this we learn the access control and in a inheritance. So we revise the visibility mode. Dear student, if I use a private visibility mode in a syntax of inheritance, we already discussed the syntax of inheritance. Class is keyword, class keyword. Now here we write a base derived class name colon derived class name. Here we use a visibility mode. Okay, visibility mode, public, private or protected, and here we use a base class name. Okay, so this is the syntax for the inheritance. Now we are going to discuss what is the effect of visibility mode. So if I uses this private visibility mode here, so what happened? See carefully. In a base class, there are three type of specifier you can you use: public, private or protected, right? Public, private and private. This is protected and this is public. Okay, so what is the effect when I use a visibility mode as a private? Okay, see carefully. Private member of the base class, this private member of the base class are not accessible in a derived class. Then, so private member cannot accessible in a derived class whenever I use a private visibility mode. Protected member of a base class, protected member, this protected member of the base class become the private in a derived class. See carefully. Become private in a derived class. This public data members also become the private member of the derived class. Say this. Private. Done? All of you getting my point? Yes. How? Whenever we use a visibility mode as a private, my private data member of base class cannot get access. My public and private data member of a base class becomes the private member of the derived class. Okay. Now we are going to discuss the visibility mode as a protected. See carefully. Again similar way, if I include a visibility mode protected, private member of the base class inaccessible in a derived class, protected member of the base class remains protected in a derived class, but public member of the base class becomes protected whenever I use a visibility access mode as a protected in an inheritance. Okay, now we are going to discuss for the public. Similar, if I use a visibility mode as a public, that time again private data member of the base class is inaccessible in a derived class. Protected member of a base class remains or become a protected member of the derived class. Public member of the base class becomes or remains public in a derived class. Done? Okay. So a derived class inherit all the base class method with the following exceptions. This is all about the data variable. What about the member function? So constructor and destructor, copy constructor are not get inherit in a derived class. Okay. Overload operator function of the base class cannot get inherit in a derived class, and also friend function of the base class is not get inherit in a derived class. Except all these are all the function of the base class you can inherit from base to derived class. Now see here, class base class having public data variable, private data variable and protected data variable. Suppose let's take an example, m underscore public is a public data variable of base class, m underscore private is a private data variable of your base class, m oblique protected is a protected data variable of your base class. So whenever I use this public visibility mode here, derive is a derived class name, base is a base class name. Now m underscore publish is equal to 1. Yes, it is allowed, can be accessed public data member in a derived class. But private, this m underscore private, we cannot use private data member of a base class in a derived class, not allowed here, right? Now protected, what about protected? Yes, you can use a protected data member in a derived class, so this is allowed. For what about outside the class? This is for the derived class. Outside the class, yes, you can access a m public outside the class. Yes. Private member, no, you cannot access private member outside the class. See here, not allowed. What about protected? Yes, you cannot access a protected member outside the class. So see here, this all about the inheritance concept and the syntax of the inheritance and how we use a inheritance concept in a programming manner in a C++ program. So thank you dear student for your kind attention. If you have any query regarding this inheritance concept, you can mail me at pranali.kakad@matoshri.edu.in. Thank you once again.